What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another prehistoric movie review. This time we are taking a look at Walking with Dinosaurs, the movie, released in 2013, of course. You know, I have a lot to say about this movie, but first we'll start off by saying Happy New Year. Of course, we have rotated around the sun one more time, and therefore we mark a brand new year. So it's very exciting stuff, all things considered. 2024 is, of course, incredibly exciting, and I plan on continuing videos, of course, you know, both on my TikTok and on this YouTube channel. So, of course, look forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun that we're going to have this next following year. But Walking with Dinosaurs. Now, this was a movie that I do remember seeing the trailers for. Way back when I was 13 years old when this movie was being released, I remember seeing the trailers, and at first I was intrigued because, of course, I still love dinosaurs. I may have been in middle school, but I never forgot the fact that I love dinosaurs. So I saw this trailer initially, and I was like, oh, that looks great. But then you have the biggest revelation, one of those words, and that is that there's dialogue. Not good dialogue either. And this is where I start ranting. I'm going to start the video off with a rant. This movie could have been good. Heck, great even, if they didn't have this dialogue. Because there is a lot to love about this movie. There's a lot of things that they did really great and that I genuinely thoroughly enjoyed. But every time we had something great, like a beautiful shot or an incredibly cool moment, it was ruined by the bird but just by the dialogue in general that just was unnecessary. It wasn't necessary for the story whatsoever. You could have had this completely dialogue-less, and you would have had a completely coherent and probably fascinating story. But of course, they had to appeal to that demographic, and they felt like the only way to do that was to add this dialogue that just didn't need to be in this movie. Now, I've heard various different stories as to why this dialogue was added. Like, I think that initially the movie was planned to be just kind of like a regular nature documentary where you have no dialogue and you just follow these dinosaurs. But the studio wanted it to appeal to that younger audience and probably wanted some of that Land Before Time hype money, I guess, as well as Disney's Dinosaur. And so they wanted to add dialogue. Hence why the animals aren't actually synced up to talk.
Wait a minute. Are you really going to eat that?
You know it. Mom's cooking.
Uh-oh. Run away!
Where are you going? All right, more for me.
No, seriously, there's a big monster behind you.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, there's a monster behind you, too. What?
You know, they kind of just think their dialogue and everybody else can hear it. That's a big indicator that they weren't planning on having dialogue in the first place, and it was added afterwards. I also get that same feeling with the opening and the ending with of course, the human characters where you're in the modern day. They are so just inconsequential for the rest of the story that they might as well not even be there. They're here. It's like, oh, here's a Gorgosaurus tooth. You want to go with us to go and find some fossils? No, dinosaurs are dumb. I don't want to do that. And then we tell the story and then suddenly he's cool with it. It's just stupid. It was stupid. It didn't need to be in the movie whatsoever. I don't even think I would have liked stuff like that when I was a child, you know, and I was a child. Oh, and the music? Not a fan. Especially for a movie that is like this, you know, it's weird hearing music with lyrics a little bit more pop-like in a movie about dinosaurs. You know, I mean, I guess it fits the tone that they were going for, but I just was not a fan at all. And so that is the biggest thing that hurts this movie. Of course, they did format it for a documentary. My wife and I did watch that too, and that is significantly better than the movie that we got. But now I'm going to try to look at this movie a little bit more organized, rant out of the way, and we're going to look at the same few elements that we looked at Disney's Dinosaur, and just kind of take a look at that stuff and just see how the movie is whatsoever. And at the end, I'm going to talk about the documentary version a little bit because I think that is worth bringing up as well. Now, we'll start off with the CGI and the cinematography. This movie is gorgeous. The animations, the CGI models, everything is fantastic about it. Like when you get close-up shots of the dinosaurs, the texturing looks incredible. The dinosaur designs are also phenomenal. I mean, I know that they were designed by David Krentz, who is an incredible paleo artist, you know, absolutely knocked it out of the park with these designs. Also designed the dinosaurs from Disney's Dinosaurs, so, you know, just pretty consistently great across the board. And the environments that they chose are obviously breathtaking. because a lot of them were filmed in Alaska, which is the spot that it takes place. Of course, Alaska didn't really look like this at the time. At the time, Pachyrhinosaurus and Nanuqsaurus lived and all that, but it's still very cool to see these dinosaurs blended into this environment because, of course, they blend in very well. Their interactions with the environment is incredible. All in all, these, the CGI and the designs of the animals look so good. Is definitely one of the high points of this movie. Next up is the story, and much like Disney's Dinosaur, there's really nothing too significant about the story. It's pretty standard stuff, especially for dinosaur movies, I'm finding, where you're just trying to migrate and then one member of the herd needs to become greater than he truly was. Apache in particular, the main character that we follow, was the runt of his nest, essentially. So he's the kind of one that has to climb those obstacles and become, the Pachyrhinosaurus that he's meant to be, basically, I guess. But no, story-wise, much like Disney's Dinosaur, there's really not much to write home about. It's pretty standard stuff. It's a pretty, it works for the context of the story. I mean, it is cool to kind of see the effects of cooler weather on dinosaurs. You don't really see dinosaurs portrayed in cooler weather. I mean, recently we have been a lot, but there's a lot of people who just automatically don't picture dinosaurs in cooler weather. So it's cool to see things like that. So, and that's tied into the story because part of their story is to migrate and then they go through certain things and whatnot. But it's pretty cool stuff. But the dinosaurs as a whole, accuracy-wise, this is very accurate, all things considered. Paleontological accuracy was kept in mind. Of course, they weren't, when it comes to the story, they weren't going for 100% accuracy, but you could see that there was a lot of attempt placed into that. Like the Gorgosaurs look fantastic with their design. I love the Pachyrhinosaur designs. Of course, Pachyrhinosaurus is one of my favorite dinosaurs ever, so I always love seeing a Pachyrhinosaurus. And these guys look fantastic across the board. I especially love the individual variation that they get. Species-wise, they do look like they're Pachyrhinosaurus lacustae, which is this fellow right here. One of the distinguishing things for lacustae are those horns right here, right at the base of the frill, right above the boss. But boss-wise, the boss is this massive skin right here. It looks like they kind of have a mix of Canadaensis as well as Pretorum. And I think that time-wise, too, they are meant to be Pretorum. So you got a little bit of a mix mash going on, but it's really not that big of a deal, all things considered. They do look fantastic as Pachyrhinosaurus designs. And that goes for the other dinosaurs that we see throughout the thing, too. Like, we see a lot of miscellaneous dinosaurs showing up, like Edmontonia, or the Oviraptorosaurs that look awesome. It looks like there was some influence taking from cassowaries, which you'll never see me complain about. That definitely fits a dinosaur of that caliber. As well as the Asdarchids, which in the documentary version, they name as Quetzalcoatlus, which I don't believe lived in Alaska, especially at the time. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but I don't believe Quetzalcoatlus was present. But as a Quetzalcoatlus design, it's not bad. It looks pretty good. It has the pycnofibers. The wings look fantastic. It's a very, very solid design, all things considered. There was also this beautifully designed Edmontosaurus. Edmontosaurus is such a cool dinosaur. So, of course, I'm extremely excited to see a dinosaur of that stature showing up in something on the screen. And its design looks incredible. It's very up to date, especially for that time. Of course, it doesn't have those hoof-like structures that we now know Edmontosaurus did possess on its front two limbs. But really, this design is so cool. Especially love the colors. When are we going to get to many interpretations of Edmontosaurus, man? It's got to happen. And the fact that they kept accuracy in mind, at least to a little bit of an extent, always gets a lot of props for me. Pretty much my philosophy is that, you don't necessarily have to go 100% accuracy, but if you do take steps to have accuracy, I'm always going to point it out because I just love stuff like that. I love seeing accurate dinosaurs in the film, and I love when people take the time to place that in. Now, again, you don't have to have 100% accurate designs. One of my all-time favorite movies is Jurassic Park, and those designs are, of course, outdated, and there were some creative liberties taken with some of them. You don't necessarily have to be 100% accurate to our current understanding to have a good dinosaur film. But again, the fact that they incorporated some of those elements into the movie gets a lot of props for me. And now let's talk about the documentary. As I mentioned before, this is the best version. This is the only version. It's shorter than the initial runtime. Like the theatrical cut of the film, I believe, is an hour and a half, whereas the documentary version is pretty much condensed down to 40 minutes. And it just cuts out a lot of the things that were kind of like added in or just were present to help incorporate a story, like the love interest, for example, because you're trying to follow Patchy, and there's some things incorporated to help enhance his story, but those things were taken out for the documentary. Instead, the documentary focuses on the herd as a whole, essentially, and kind of the dinosaurs in the environment. You know, a lot of things are cut out. We get a quick little like a few migration segments, but we don't focus on Patchy and the other Pachyrhinosaurs, essentially. Like, we don't focus on them as much. They're kind of like inconsequential to the overall documentary experience. They're just a few members of the much larger herd. As well as the Gorgosaurs, which are, in the documentary, they're named as Nanuqsaur, which is an accuracy, because I believe at the time when the first, like the theatrical cut of Walking with Dinosaurs was made, there were some indeterminate remains found that were thought to be Gorgosaurus, which of course is another tyrannosaur. But later they were found to be a completely different genus, and so it didn't seem that Gorgosaurus actually spread out to Alaska. They were renamed to Nanuqsaurus, which are these guys from Prehistoric Planet, of course, the polar bear lizard, if you will. And in the documentary, they are renamed as such. Of course, their design doesn't really match up to Nanuqsaurus. There's quite a few design differences, and of course, feathers are likely on Tyrannosaurs, but this is another little fun fact. I know, like, I was reading a few little bits of behind the scenes. They contemplated adding feathers to the Gorgosaurus, but of course, feathers on Tyrannosaurs, especially at the time, were a very contentious topic because we didn't have any evidence of it on those type of dinosaurs at the time. But then after the movie had released, we had discovered Eutyrannus, which is a tyrannosauroid. So from that point on, it seemed a lot more likely that other tyrannosaurs could possess feathering, especially ones that lived in relatively cooler environments, like how the tyrannosaurs in this movie were. Like, you'll often see Nanuqsaurus portrayed with feathers, and that's because it lived in a typically cooler environment. But that was just a little fun fact I wanted to show. It doesn't really bring the movie down in any way, because of course that wasn't necessarily confirmed. They had the choice to make, and they made a choice. So it looks great. It looks great regardless. But like I said, the documentary is definitely the best version of it, and I wish that this was a little bit more accessible to everybody. It came out theatrically. It was released a year after the first film. It was just edited and formatted to fit that documentary style, and was actually voiced by Doctor Strange himself, Benedict Cumberbatch. So that's fun. That's a really cool inclusion. He does really good narrating the whole project, and again, my wife and I just enjoyed that version way more than we did the movie version. But now, my overall thoughts on these projects. You already know I loved the documentary version. The movie version, it's great if you look at the visuals. If you look at the visuals and try to ignore the voices as much as you possibly can, it's very good. But because those voices, they just pop up so much, and we have to hold on to the fact that, Gorgosaurus has tiny arms, which is just such low-hanging fruit. Yeah, Tyrannosaurus had tiny arms, but they also had some of the most powerful bite force of any land animal to ever exist. That is something to write home about. And actually, a little fun thing in the documentary version. Let me just play the clip.
The only slightly comic aspect to Nanuqsaurus is its tiny two-fingered arms, but that's where the joke ends.
Because in the theatrical version, he kind of just holds on to that joke for the longest time, and they just keep going back to I can't take him seriously with the baby arms, blah 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 blah. I just like how in the documentary version they're like, yeah, no, that's where the joke ends. We're done. That was just something I wanted to bring up. I think it's fun. Well, I just think that this movie could have been a lot better than it truly was when it was released. I completely understand that those additions were made primarily for children in mind, and I am not a children, so it's hard for me to really kind of look at it from that perspective. But once again, I just feel like when I was a child, I don't think I would have really gravitated towards this, because like even movies like Land Before Time and Disney's Dinosaur, they were made with the intention of having dialogue from an earlier point. So their story revolves around something like that, instead of just creating something that looks great and has the potential to be great and then just slapping some dialogue on top of it, just kind of haphazardly and trying to make these kind of like weird jokes and just weird story elements that just didn't fit the film at all. So that's basically my overall thought. Like, this movie could have been a lot better when it was released, but it just, there was all of those elements that just held it back from being a truly memorable dinosaur, truly memorable piece of dinosaur media, because we don't get a lot of dinosaur media. We want some good movies and shows and things like that. And then when we get things like this, it's just harder to produce more, because it feels like when they release things like this, they're just not that well received, and so we never get any projects outside of the Jurassic franchise. And I love the Jurassic franchise, don't get me wrong, but of course it would be great to see more prehistoric media outside of that little bubble. But anyway, this isn't, of course, the most overall positive review of this movie. I had never watched this movie. It's been 10 years since it released, so it was just something I kind of stayed away from. But of course, I did get some requests to talk about it, and I do want to listen to what the audience wants, what you guys want, what my community wants. So, here we are. But anyway, that's pretty much all I have for this one. I am working on the many interpretations of Ankylosaurus video. That might be decently lengthy. We'll see. I hope to get that out soon. I'm shooting for Thursday or Friday. My wife and I have been moving in. We've been moving locations recently, moving our home, essentially. So we've been really busy with all of that. So content has slowed a little bit, but I am still working on getting as much content as out. Dang, I'm also working on talking better, but I'm working on getting more content out as much as possible. I'm trying not to have too many hiccups in something like that. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts on Walking with Dinosaurs are. Did you like the movie? Did you dislike the movie? Be sure to let us know why. But that's pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good one.